And the confession said that I, Hans Fritschie, hereby confess to what was it he confessed to? Confessed to the invasion. I committed crimes against humanity against the Russian people, something to that effect. And well, I think it was more than that. I think I, Hans Fritschie, confess to waging aggressive war and committing crimes against humanity and war crimes. It's the language of the Atlantic Charter against the Soviet people. Do you remember this?
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Well, I won't go into detail about that. So anyway, we were very concerned about this, that this is not an affidavit we thought should be introduced into evidence. But the Russians nevertheless decided to do so, Rudenko, and they showed this confession to Hans Fritschie, and I think it was Rudenko who asked him, he said, Fritschie, did you sign this confession? Yeah, yes, I did. And so he read it into the record, and Fritschie said, yes, it is true that I signed that, but there's not a word of truth in it. And that was the time when Judge Lawrence almost stood up on the bench, and he said, Fritschie, Mr. Fritschie, will you please repeat that, what you said? And he said, yes. He said, there's not a, you said you signed this document and there's not a word in it, of truth in it. We would like to hear your explanation. So that gave Fritschie his chance to, I can remember that incident very clearly.
You want some water?
No, I'm all right.
This is incredible. Let me just tell you. So obviously, you were not only well trained in what you did in Nuremberg, but you can see that professorial approach towards this stuff. Are you doing that? Yeah. We're going to switch gears completely, and we're going to talk a little bit about the cross-examination of Goering. We talked about that in the car a little bit. Preparation for that, and then I think it was 3 days worth of cross-examination in which you're right there with Chief Justice Jackson. So as soon as I get my act together here, we'll switch gears.
All right. His mind was all right, though. He defended himself pretty well.
Let's set the scene, and maybe you can set it for us, but clearly the marquee matchup at Nuremberg, the two heavyweights, was going to be Justice Jackson cross-examining Hermann Goering. In anticipation of that, first, how much lead time did you have from, you know it was going to happen, but as far as looking at the schedule and you knew you were going to go on a certain date, did you know a week ahead of time, a month ahead of time?
I imagine a week, I don't know. We didn't have much time.
Yeah.
I didn't have much time because I didn't know I was to assist Justice Jackson. Mm-hmm. I don't remember when he asked me. Maybe it's a week before or something. Or maybe it was longer, I don't know. I can't remember that.
How did it happen? How did it come about?
I haven't got the faintest idea why he did that. None whatsoever. Up to then, he had always used Elsie Douglas. And I don't know. Maybe he used somebody else. I don't remember. I don't have any idea why he did this. Goering was not my. I can't. I really don't know why he did this. There has been some reason.
So the day arrives, and the place is packed. The emotion is high. Set the scene for us as you walk into the courtroom knowing that today was the day that Justice Jackson was going to have an opportunity to cross-examine Hermann Goering. I guess leading up to that, he obviously put on his case. Who was his attorney, Goering's attorney?
I can't remember. I'm sure we know. It's in Turner. Who was Goering's attorney? Oh,
Yeah, I got it here.
Tama.
Stallmer.
Oh, Stallmer.
Otto Stallmer.
Otto Stallmer.
Yeah.
Yeah, Otto Stallmer. Goering didn't really need his counsel. He took care of himself very effectively.
So he presents his case, and then it's time for the cross-examination.
Right.
Was Jackson the first to go? I know that other...
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe that, I'm quite sure that we were the first ones to cross-examine Hermann Goering.
And did Jackson talk to you in advance of that? Was there...
No, my role was really not to, he didn't consult me with respect to advice. He did his own planning and so forth. But he wanted me to help him on evidentiary matters, particularly the things such as the Reichskristallnacht, his Goering's involvement in that, and in the Stalag Luft 6, and these more specific crimes that he wanted me to get that type of evidence for him. But Justice Jackson had conceived his own plan of design of cross-examination of Hermann Goering. You know, Justice Jackson didn't, he wasn't dependent upon the members of his staff. Justice Jackson was an extremely able, capable lawyer. He knew what he was doing. He didn't have to ask anybody else. He laid out his own plans. And he had devised an extremely significant and, I thought, beautiful plan for the cross-examination of Hermann Goering, which didn't work out quite as we had planned.
What was the plan?
The plan was to develop through the testimony of the number 2 leader of Nazi Germany just how the Nazi conspiracy developed, and how these leaders had taken away the freedoms of the German people and brought them into under their own control, and carried out their aggressive designs. He wanted to prove the conspiracy count. That was the big thing against Hermann Goering. Now, we had plenty of other material that we could use against Goering, which we did use, and we had to fall back upon very much, because the grand plan did not come off quite as effectively as Justice Jackson had hoped and expected. That's absolutely true.
We now know in the readings and watching it on the video that he was very frustrated by the fact that he would ask a direct question and yet there was a narrative. There was not an immediate response or a yes or no response. How much of a sense of frustration did you get there, being right at the table with Justice Jackson? Did you see him get flustered?
Well, Justice Jackson wanted to establish that, as you say, that this group of men had the idea of gaining control of the German state and subordinating the people to their plans for aggression, and how you go about this. Now suppose here's his idea. Suppose you happen to be the head of any state, and you want to enlarge the power of the state and maybe wage war against your neighbors. You need to have the people supporting you, and you have to eliminate vocal opposition or other opposition. Now, how do you go about this? This is his idea. So he sought to establish how dictatorships come into being and the harm they can perpetuate through the cross-examination of this chief witness of the Nazi regime. And so he started out right away by pointing out, asking Goering, well now Goering, when you, I wish I could remember, well you probably, we've got the testimony, but anyway, it was the idea that you want to get you want to eliminate opposition, and you want to be sure you gain the full support of the people. So what's one of the first things you did? In Prussia, he was the head of, Goering was the head of the Prussian government. You established a secret state police. And this secret police goes out and it can apprehend individuals who are perhaps opposed to or not fully supportive of the designs of the leaders of the state now, the dictatorial people. And so you established a secret state police. And did you do this in Prussia, Hermann Goering? Well, now, yes, I did. We did establish it, but now you have police in every country, and some of them are secret and some are not. And in the United States, I'm sure that you've got problems with the police, and so. And Goering would go on like this for 5 minutes. This completely frustrated Jackson's design for a cross-examination of this witness, because he needed to have affirmative responses. And of course, if Goering wanted to say something in addition, well, that's his right. But Goering would be evasive, and then he would expound and enlarge upon his answers, and then he would try to throw them back on things that he said happened in the United States or Great Britain. So this is why that part of the cross-examination did not come off very well. And Jackson had his plan, and Goering was frustrating it. So Jackson did ask Lord Lawrence if he would please instruct the witness to answer the questions yes or no, and then he can make an explanation. Or he said it would be better if he made a complete explanation in his on his direct examination by his own defense counsel. And Lawrence wouldn't do it, because this is a tradition of Anglo-American legal trials. You ask a witness, too bad. The witness can answer what he wants. If it's reasonably responsive, that's the way we operate. So that is what caused the press to give a rather unflattering appraisal of Justice Jackson's initial examination of Goering. And Goering did answer responsibly, but he was not completely evasive, but he would use this tactic of saying, well, this happens every place and all that kind of thing, and make a long speech, and that was disconcerting. But when we got into the questions, which is my really part of the contribution, I guess, to the cross-examination of the really bad things that Goering himself did, Goering lost his arrogance, and he became a compliant witness, and he wasn't any problem. It was the outset. It was the first 2 days we had problems. And I think, unfortunately, that Goering did get under Jackson's skin a bit. I think Jackson was a little bit, quite a bit, disconcerted with Goering's method of response which disrupted his design for the cross-examination. And the fact that Lord Lawrence would not support him in his desire to have Goering answer more directly the questions asked of him.
After the first day and things did not go well, were you brought in at all kind of on a staff saying, all right, what can we do better tomorrow?
Yes, I was. And Justice Jackson asked me to try to dig up some material that we could hit him with, and that was not easy to do. I did but the best I could. Yeah, he did discuss it with me.
Was there anybody else on that team that was kind of brought in?
No, I don't know. I am very sure that Justice Jackson discussed it with Bill Jackson, and for all I know with others. Maybe for all I know, he may have talked to Colonel Amon or the head of the interrogation. I don't know. He just told me that he, try to see if we can't get something that'll hit this fellow a little bit, and I did the best I could.
So there was really 3 days of which there was cross-examination by Jackson of Goering. After day 3, when the tide had turned, even though the press had already
that was too bad. It was too bad. You see, now looking back at it, looking back at this now, Justice Jackson had a wonderful idea, and it was very difficult, but it could have been pulled off all right, to prove the conspiracy, not only the conspiracy through Hermann Goering, but to demonstrate to the world how a dictatorship functions and how men can get in power in a democratic country, how they can subvert democracy into fascism. But what we should have done is to have hit Goering with the specific charges at the beginning. For example, on Kristallnacht, they had the meeting after Kristallnacht, and the Goering came up with this horrible idea that having beaten up on the Jewish people, they would simply impose a fine of a billion Reichsmarks, so that the insurance companies would have to pay the money not to the Jews whose homes were demolished and properties destroyed, and so on, but to pay it to the state. And that was Goering's great idea. So we should have gone into that, in that conference, Goering summed the whole thing up, as you recall, by the end, saying, "I would hate to be a Jew in Germany today." This is 1938. Now, that's where we should have started. And then we got into Stalag Luft 6, where, the British flyers were recaptured and shot. And this is a terrible thing for an airman like Goering. So we hit him with those things. That's what we hit him with later on. But we should have hit him with those things first. Now Goering. This is what happens in a dictatorial regime, isn't it? Oh, I don't know. And then we'll say, well, now, isn't it a fact that as soon as you got into power, you established a secret police in Prussia, where you were the head? By this time, Goering is broken. But see, we didn't do it that way. We asked those questions first. Now, Goering is strong. He's not concerned about what's going to happen to him at that point. And he comes back and says, well, yeah, of course I established a police. We call it the secret police. It's not much different from the police you have in New York. I see the police. They beat up a bunch of people yesterday. I see the paper in New York City. So what are you talking about? See? You learn from experience. But what this doesn't take away from Justice Jackson's a genius at conceiving the proper way of going about this and trying to establish through this key witness the evils of tyranny, a tyrannical regime.
Then after the 3 days with Jackson's cross-examination, and then was it the British's turn, David Maxwell?
Yeah, they took him on.
Then did the French and the Russians, was everybody?
I think they did. I don't know. I've written an article on that.
Yeah.
You probably may have it. I don't remember it was published, but yeah, I don't know whether they did or not. By that time, I was back on my own job.
So really, that was sort of 3 days that you were asked to assist Jackson at the podium.
Yes.
Then you went back to prepare for Kaltenbrunner.
Yeah, I went back to my own task. Yeah.
And Gary, John, recently we had a visit from the grandson of Walter Schellenberg.
Is that right?
And in going to the transcripts of the IMT, we noticed an affidavit of Walter Schellenberg, and I believe you were interrogator of Walter Schellenberg. What's your recall, if any, of Walter Schellenberg? Who was he? What was he?
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah, he's kind of a mystery guy.
And Walter Schellenberg, the name is very, of course, right now it comes to, what did Schellenberg, did he have something to do with Denmark?
In the intelligence, he was apparently involved with, even at the end, trying to negotiate peace.
Yeah.
He was sort of the
Yeah, Schellenberg, yeah. I don't know.
What's your highlight there, Whitney? As you reflect back on Nuremberg, is you were one of the few who really were there at the beginning, literally London, and there literally at the end when they were executed. Nobody could really say that, short of you and Drexel maybe.
Well, even Drexel wasn't there at the execution.
That's right. You're it.
But Drexel was there for all the subsequent trials, which I had nothing to do with. I only had to do with the major trial.
But as you close your eyes and you say, gee, now that 60 years later I reflect back on Nuremberg, the 2 or 3 moments which kind of are my signature opportunities to make a difference at Nuremberg, what would they be?
Oh, I really don't know. I will say that I think that the one question that I asked during that whole nearly year-long episode that was the most significant was the question, how many men, women, and children did your organization kill that year to Wad Ollendorf? That was the best question I ever asked in my life, because that brought the admission of the entire Holocaust. And I had no idea what the answer would be. Now, when it came to Rudolf Hirsch, that's he was cooperative from the beginning, but that was such a surprise, and that opened the whole case. And that was at the beginning of the case. So that has to be the single most significant thing that happened to me in the trial. Yeah, that question.
How did you maintain your own sanity in the midst of all
Well,
this?
see,
Question he asked.
see, the lawyers don't think like other people. That's an absolute fact. In the examination of witnesses, you just can't be a human being. That's out. You have to ask the right questions at the right time to get the right answer that you're seeking, and that's it. Then after it's all over, you can. I'm emotional now, and it's 50 years afterwards. But I wasn't emotional when I asked the question. Not at all. This is factual, and that's the difference. You're not appraising. You're not evaluating at that time. Isn't that right?
What's the legacy of Nuremberg?
Oh, my God. Well, the legacy of Nuremberg. Let's put it this way. The lesson of Nuremberg is the consequences of man's inhumanity to man. That's what we did in Nazi Germany. This is just clearly reducing mankind to symbolism. What is a man? There's nothing, except as he serves the state. That's all. And this is a philosophy of nihilism, and this is a philosophy that will bring the world down if we don't overcome it. Man cannot be subordinated to a world of dictatorship and tyranny. The soul of man has to be acknowledged, and we have to respect our fellow man as a human being, and not as a factor in the rise to power of some dictator. That's about it.
Wow. Whitney, thank you.
Well, I didn't mean to make a speech.
We were hoping you did.
Everything I've said is in that little book anyway, I think. More accurately, too, I hope.
Did Goering respond in English or German?
German. Well, however, he did understand English. Once in a while he used English term.
You know that, tonight, 5 we're having a reception, if you want to stop by.
Mark Wrighton is a good friend of mine.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm a professor of chemistry and a photochemical scientist, as is Mark.
Right, I know that.
Yeah, and so we've known him since the time he was an undergraduate.
Well, listen, let me be sure I have your
Let
name
me
so
give
I
my
can say
card,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that, because
Gotta make
I'm
sure.
very close to Mark Wright.
He's a very, very good guy, yeah. And he will know who I am, for sure, so.
Well, isn't that nice? Thank you very much. That's really nice of you to do that.
So I have been just fascinated by the 3 times now. I lived in Chautauqua County
Yes.
as a boy, and Jackson was my grandfather's attorney when we lived around here. for
What do you
various
know
things.
about that?
So when this center started, I thought, well, gee, we should connect up with it.
Yeah.
And so we do, and this is just a wonderful, your speech yesterday was just very, very, very timely, obviously. So, can I get you to sign here?
Oh, I'd be so happy to
But
do that.
anyway, Mark has been down there about, what, 6, 7 years, something
Yeah.
like that?
Well, I think it's going to be 10 years.
Is that, oh, God.
Can you
is it?
believe that?
I can't, no. I absolutely can't.
Well, he's done a fabulous job.
Oh, he is
Now,
so-
how shall I make this out?
Doug Neckers, to Doug, yeah,
To Doug?
yeah,
D-O-U-G?
you got it.
Is that the way you want it? Or
That's great, that's
All right.
fine, yeah.
I think that's nice. That's personal.
That's right. And but anyway, I do really appreciate having a chance to hear you again, and have been fascinated by this history for the whole time I remember studying history, so.
Yeah.
It's just an awful.
A lot of things I can't remember now, you know.
Well,
I'm
I
getting-
think you're doing pretty well.
60 years go by, and
Yeah,
that's
I
a
think
long
you're
time, Doug.
doing really well, so, anyway, this is my wife Sue over here.
Well, so nice to know you.
This has been fascinating. Such a pleasure. And we will be here in the morning as well for the service.
Yes, well, that's
You'd be Episcopalian for a day.
Well, we are.
Oh, there you go.
We have been.
Been to St. Luke's?